And do you think then that like when you do sink into that mode of like being lazier, and that, like you said, I think you put it beautifully there by saying it dictates your way of living instead of it just being a part of it. Do you think it like taxes you mentally as well?
Definitely, because if you're doing the same stuff constantly, and like there's no, like I watched, do you remember the series Lost?
Yeah, mate, I found the
I,
box set the other day. It's behind me.
mate, that's my favorite show of all time,
Yeah.
and I watched that the whole way through. I watched that, and it took me and my girlfriend about a month to do that. Every
Yeah.
day we watched it all day,
Yeah.
and,
Wow.
until we were asleep. And like you got to remember, there's episodes in that where like there's series of that where it's like 25
Yeah.
episodes per
I think,
series.
was it
So
6 series in the end?
I don't know
Something like that.
yeah, 6 series and 25 episodes, which are about 50 minutes a pop, which is
Yeah.
quite insane. I know I remember doing that and thinking like, and like, I felt like I achieved something at the end, weirdly, but like, it was more like every day it was the same. And, we were doing it and we didn't, and neither of us really cared in the moment. But when you look in a like a retrospective way, like that was probably the month where my mental health was actually not that great, because I was
Mm.
just doing the same thing. And if you're doing the same thing constantly, you're not challenging yourself, and you're not, if anything, you either stagnate mentally or you go down. There's doing the same thing every day. I just don't see that. Even if what you're doing is like the most fun thing in the world, like everyone says, like work a job that you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life, something like that.
Yeah.
Take a job, but I think like, say, the reason why those jobs are good is because you're constantly kept on your toes. It's not like you're putting in the same numbers on the same computer every day. Like you're doing slightly different things, even if it's slightly. But like when you're watching a TV series for like a month straight and nothing else, like of course it's gonna tax you mentally. Like there's not really any pros to that would make you go upwards. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Maybe with a, I don't know. It's a very strange thing. Very, very strange.
Yeah. And what did you do then once you kind of realized you're in that slump to kind of help you get back out of it and back up?
It took me a while, man. It took me a long time. It was like I don't know. I think that, sorry, I'm just trying to think. Like I think it took me longer than that. That like it took me a while after to realize that in hindsight. And then I started working out again, and like that was supposed to like improve my mind state. But then like, I don't know, man. I think I'm just not cut out for lockdown life, really. Like
Mm.
I like being outside, and like I like being able to do things. I don't think many people are actually fully. Yeah, I don't know. What about you, man? Like what, when would you say it taxed you mentally? It taxes you mentally.
I think, yeah, I think, but only more recently. It wasn't during the actual lockdown. Like during the actual lockdown, I was fine, like I said, because I was staying productive. It was once the lockdown began to ease in like the beginning of July,
Mm-hmm.
I started to get really overwhelmed because I was like thinking like, oh, now like there's like all this other stuff that, you know, even just to like go and see my mates felt like it was overwhelming in a way, because it was like, oh my God, am I gonna have that social? Am I gonna feel like I'm able to be social? Am I, you know, have I lost my social skills? Or, you know, just things that I guess we would have taken for granted normally, all of a sudden became overwhelming to me, because I did put myself in such a cave of like being productive, like, you know, writing, podcasting, you know, making content, like just doing all of this stuff. So when everything started to ease, I started to feel a bit like uneasy about it. And then
100.
going back into this lockdown, I felt a bit more like uneasy about it as well. I wasn't as excited because I felt like I'd now got used to kind of hanging out, and like me and my girlfriend were like going places, and, you know, just not having to meet up in a park, for example. And all of a sudden that's now not an option. It's like, oh, like I feel like I don't know what, I had like a couple of days last week where I was really ropey in terms of like my head, like mindset, because I was like, I was just overwhelmed by everything. I was looking at my to-do list and I was like, it was 4 or 5 things. And I was like, I don't know if I can do any of them. I was just like,
Yeah,
geez, I'm just sitting here staring at this list. Like, I don't know where to start. So yeah, it's been a bit of a wild one.
yeah, man. I think we're at a space in time though where it's like, and this is another thing I like to think about, is that like where this is like quiet, you do like normally when you feel mentally stressed or like you're feeling like things are like you're being taxed mentally or all that stuff, there is a sense of like an isolation already.
Mm,
Yeah, and what's weird about this is that you where people say, you're not alone, when that's like the first thing that someone always says when you're feeling down. And it's actually true. But in this instance, yeah, we are in such a unique in like scenario where actually everyone knows how you feel or has
mm,
known how you feel this year. So like there's a weird sense of community that's going on. I find that that's like inadvertently happened with this thing that has separated us. And it almost felt like we were more closer than ever this year because there was like you're saying what you just said about how you felt. It's like it resonates with me because I felt it 2 weeks ago
yeah.
or I felt it 3 days ago. Do you know what I mean? And it's like a chain of it's crazy, man. I don't know. I think it's weird, like being isolated and go. I definitely, obviously, first lockdown was much more serious and felt much
Mm,
more genuinely like well, people were taking it seriously, weren't they? Like way more than they seem to be now. But I think that kind of propelled us into this thing where we just kind of, I don't know, like everyone just seems to like have gone through something in that time frame that that you could resonate with, if that makes
mm,
sense. Because it was like everyone went through the same kind of cycle of emotions. Like, oh, this is exciting. I can get loads of stuff done. Oh, I maybe didn't do as much as I could possibly have done. Oh, I'm pretty down about that. Oh, well, might as well get up and try and do it again. And then it's like a cycle. And I think loads of people felt that way. And, one thing to make a note of is anything you felt regarding this period or since it's happened, there's definitely at least one of a group of 5, let's say, that's felt a very similar thing for sure.
yeah. And I think it also it's like it's completely valid to feel how you feel. Like
Definitely.
you're saying, other people have felt it, so it's not like it's a strange thing. So, like, I think a lot of people have beaten themselves up a little bit for feeling a little bit down or a little bit sad, or like, people who have lost work or things like that. I think people have started to beat themselves up about it, but it's like actually it's okay to feel like that. Like, it's fine because we're in such a weird state of the world that
Mhm.
all of this seems very uneasy for people. So it's like, don't beat yourself up for feeling bad about it, because that's a pretty normal feeling right now.
It's definitely that's the case. And like apart from anything else, like I think and this is another thing to talk about, is that I think that like this year has definitely shone a light on mental health
Mm,
being as important as it is, because everyone probably had a problem with theirs this year, like like, and it just shows it's like it's okay to feel like that all the time, not just because we're going through a pandemic. And I think that's why it's important, because people are coming to the point where like they are feeling things that they might have begrudgingly kind of poked like sort of fun at others for feeling beforehand, and
mm,
now they know how it feels. So it's a thing where it's like everyone's kind of understanding mental health a little bit more, and like how important it is and how like valuable and like how fragile it is too. And I think that it's definitely helped us move forward in that sense, and it's definitely sparked more of a conversation with it. But I don't know. I think that I think that I fear to see what the statistics of
Mm,
the amount of people that have suffered in this outside of like the COVID suffering, how many there's been. I hate to look at things as statistics and humans as statistics, so I kind of avoid it. But you know, I'm sure I'll find out some sort of horrific statistic about how many people went through and had, you know, decided to do certain things in this time, and that's such a fear of mine, is to see that, because I know that there'll be such a vast amount of people, and it'll be like a, yeah, I don't know, it's crazy. I just hope that anyone who watches this knows that like anything that they're feeling, regardless if it's to do with the pandemic or if it's not, is like, it's perfectly okay. Like, you know, and as the cliche goes, you aren't alone, because there's two people right here
yeah.
who felt it and are open to talk about it. And I think, yeah, conversation's really important with that stuff, I think. And these kind
Yeah.
of conversations are really important,
And
definitely.
and have those conversations opened up as well, would you say, like with your friends and family, or is it more of like a general thing?
Well, I'm pretty lucky. I've always been quite open about my mental health, and my friends, pretty much like 95% of them are the same. And the same with my family. Like my dad went through a lot of stuff when I was a kid that I didn't understand. And we fell out quite a few times. Well, we had a really rocky relationship, me growing up, because I just didn't understand him at all.
Yeah.
And then when I went through my own stuff, like I was like, oh man, I really wish I'd taken that on board. But as a kid, you're so ignorant to everything. You just have no idea. And you know, and I think that I was just really lucky to get to a point when I got reached adulthood, went through that stuff that I went through and still go through all the time. Um, and like we have a pretty good relationship. Like, oh, like my friend Mike, I'm gonna see him in about an hour. we Me and Mike, he's just texted me saying, God, can you send me a link to this podcast when it's out? Because I just said I'm on a podcast. And so I'll give him a little shout out. So shout out Mike. But
That's the
he
test if he's listening or not, because then he'll never
yeah,
got the
yeah,
shout
yeah,
out.
exactly, bro, exactly. But with Mike, we've been friends since I was 11 years old. And it's really funny, like we both went through some really tough stuff, like in our, you know, when we were like 11 to 13, that kind of age. Like he went through some stuff with, there was like things going on with his life and things going on with my life that we went through. But even at that age, we had such profound
Mm,
um discussions, and such like that I know that none of my
yeah.
peers of my age group were having, because I could just tell that everything was very, because people didn't understand it. But I think we were both, I suppose you could say we were both quite depressed kids, which
Mm,
helped us build emotional maturity earlier. And we were able as men to, or boys, to have conversations that I still hold so valuable at 23 years old now, as I did back then. I can remember us talking about like some of the stuff that most adults would shy away from having, like at all times. And like it was so honest and so open, and it was such a unique friendship. And it kind of, and it that for me was such an integral part of my life. And like growing up, um like I don't know, like growing up and seeing and like meeting new people, I already had, was like, that is what a friendship should be. That's how a friendship
mm,
should be. So I've always had that with my friends, and obviously my family have always just been great with me as and like me and my dad have a strong bond because of our mental health and how we view it, and like we have great conversations about that. And like the rest of my family are great as well. So I am really lucky. I know that was a very short question of yours, and I've given like a 10 minutes answer, but I am so lucky to have been given what I haven't. And I suppose, yes, it's helped in a way with like, the 5% of people that of friends around me that don't normally talk about it. It's definitely helped with those. But yeah, like I have a pretty good emotionally connected relationship with everyone I know. And like, we're all pretty open about it and stuff. So
I think
yeah.
that's
What
great,
about
man.
you?
Mine's I get a lot of mine weirdly through the podcast and through like writing and stuff. Like I talk to, I talk to my girlfriend about it quite a lot because I'm very on it with like entering into like a fairly new relationship. Like you have to be as authentic as possible to understand each other. So we're both very good in that sense. In like if we're having a bad day, we'll like say to each other that I'm having a bad day. And it will either be a case of like, okay, well, do you want to talk about it? We can chat, or no, I just need today to just be like with myself, and then let's speak about it tomorrow.
Mhm.
Um, and then yeah, like I said, I've got a couple of friends that I'll have really like in-depth conversations with at times. But I to be honest, I get so much out of just doing this, like this, because this like I'm able to talk really openly here. Like there's no I think that the most important thing when you're having those conversations is to feel like there's no judgment. And I think when I'm sharing on here with a guest or when I do like solo episodes, that there's no judgment coming from
Mhm.
the other side because people are choosing to listen for a start, but also because maybe it's because you can't see the person, you can't try and interpret what their judgment is. I don't know, maybe that's a part of it, but I do get so much out of it because I try to bring as much openness and stuff to the podcast. And when I do have days and weeks where I'm not feeling great, I'll bring that into the conversation, and then you can always talk over it with someone. So
Mhm.
but yeah, like with family and stuff, it's probably less so, to be honest. I think that's just the family dynamic in our
Fair enough.
family. It's a very much a I come from an immigrant family, so it's very much like, it's a survival mentality rather than it was,
Right.
let's be open about how we're feeling kind of thing. But it's getting better. It's not like it's not going anywhere, but it's just,
It
but
takes time. I can imagine something like that. It takes time to get to that, as you say, like with that survival mentality. It's like it can sometimes make certain feelings feel trivial to talk
mm,
about with certain people, but it's not that that's the case. But like internally, that's how we see it.
exactly.
And sometimes it's nice. And what I find is like my thing is like with my mum and dad, like, and this I always find this a bit of a trip to think about, but like they actually don't know me at all. The
Yeah.
same way I don't know my parents at all. Like I know them as my parents and they know me as their child. But do we know anything like outside of that? I'm not sure. And I don't know if I want to know because I like viewing my parents as my parents. Obviously, I know what they were. I have an idea of what they were like before, but I'll never fully understand because I wasn't friends with them in the I don't know, the 80s or the 90s because I was a child. You know what I mean? I'm just, and like, as you get older, you kind of understand your parents more and their way of thinking, as I say about my dad. But like, there is a nice element with family, especially, well, with parents, especially within family, there is a certain niceness to not knowing everything. And
Mm,
like, they're having like little boundaries and stuff because it's like, you know, I think that it's nicer for your friends to know everything about you because they're the people that you see on a more frequent basis. My family, I don't see as much. That's just how my life has gone, and like doesn't change anything. I love my family and wouldn't choose anyone else to be in my family. But my thing is I just think that I think that some things are really nice to have. Like some things are genuinely nicer to have with people you choose to have in your life because you've
mm,
chosen to have that person. Do you know what I mean? Like a friend, as you say, friend is the family you choose. So like sometimes you can't always say things to family because you know that they will stick around and make you pay for it for the rest of your life. But with friends, you're like, we might not be friends in the future. I can tell you this, and we can have a conversation, and it will. I don't know. It's a weird one. It's a weird one. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
Yeah, no, it does. It does. And I think it's a lot of it comes down to me. It's like to understanding. It's like you can only understand someone as well as they understand themselves. And
yeah,
even then, you don't get to understand all of it because you'll never be able to understand fully what's going on in their head. So I find if someone hasn't been able to see that side of themselves or understand that side of themselves, you're going to find it hard to do so as well.
yeah,
And I've really learned that as well with like certain friends who are a little less open. It's because they don't know how to maybe express that side of themselves, or how to not even express it, but how to to look at it for themselves and how to like inquire about it for themselves. Because I think that's where a lot of it comes out, is when you start to ask yourself the questions, you start to try and find the answers, and
Yeah.
then you can begin to talk about it. Like I know that's how like my journey started, with like beginning to talk to friends about what I struggled with when I was younger, and everything.